the Workhorse podcast, where we dig deep into the grit, passion, and strategy behind building a successful rural business. We're your hosts.
I'm Kendall Ballantyne, owner of Central Park Farms and marketing for farmers.
And I'm Jessica Garza, owner of Moose Valley Ranch and founder of Market in the Mountains.
This podcast is for hardworking female farmers and rural entrepreneurs who are ready to turn their dreams into thriving businesses. From deep diving business strategies that actually work to balancing farm family life and everything in between.
We're here to give you practical tools, candid insights, and a healthy dose of community support. If you're looking for women who actually cheer you on, are willing to tell you the hard truths, and that understand how much it can throw off your day when the cows get out, you're in the right spot.
This podcast is for the doers, the women who don't stay in one spot for too long, for the workhorses.
I'm really excited today to ask Kendall some questions about CPF. I feel like I know the story really well. Obviously, I've known you for years and we've talked through a lot of different things, but I was not there for the beginning, which I know you talked about in episode 12 with Jay, like how it kind of got started. But I really wasn't there for any of the early middle kind of like strong growth parts of CPF, Central Park Farms. And I didn't meet you until after Marketing for Farmers had started. So there's always kind of been this blank, like I feel like you just waltzed into my life as this, not waltzed, you like runway model strutted across a field in Oklahoma. To this day, the blonde hair blowing, you were wearing a skirt, I remember that. And just had like class act, everything all together, and one of the most educational speakers I had heard up to that date on small business. And it was just like you were an apparition in the field. Like you just...
You missed the wildly messy middle that happens. And that is, I'm excited to hot seat that because it certainly wasn't a runway walk and waltz through this business. It has been a lot more challenging and a lot more changes. And where I was when I started versus where I am now is wildly different in the past 10 years. That's for sure.
And I mean, now knowing your history, I think I've looked back a couple times and we always joke, like, give us a hobby, we'll make it a business. Also send us on vacation, we'll probably make it a business, like whatever it is. But truly, I met you at a point where you had already massively diversified. And it was that after COVID? Right.
It was during COVID. No, it was during COVID because I had the hardest time leaving Canada and getting into the US. And I had to do all the COVID tests and everything in order to be able to fly and be admitted to the US. That was a chaotic trip for me, for sure.
Yeah, I think that when I say right after, it's because really I was only affected by the first, that's not a fair statement. I was affected by all of it. It really only impacted my day-to-day in the first 2 weeks because we were essential. And so I always say after COVID and people are like, it lasted forever. And I'm like, we were back to our day-to-day pretty quickly. Anyways, not important in the grand scheme of things, but I was trying to place it. So we've heard you started midlife crisis. It's not even midlife, quarter life crisis, divorce, meet Jay, slinging chickens out of the driveway. Yeah. But what do you think was the single biggest first step, right? Like, cause you start with slinging chickens out of the driveway, and what did you feel like was your first?
Yeah. And honestly, like I was just trying to offset the cost so I could raise my own birds. And I just genuinely didn't know how to do that without it being a business. It was like I named the company and I made a logo and I made social media accounts and I did all those things because that was the end of things that I understood. So I didn't get the concept that I probably could have just raised a few chickens and sold them without having to have a company name and a logo. I probably could have just flipped them in the driveway without it being a business. But I opened the business bank account and I registered the name and I got the domain and I did all of those things just because that was what I knew. What I didn't know was how to farm. So I started Central Park Farms that way. And then when I finally realized that I needed to make a change for my corporate career, I was really unhappy with where I was working. To be completely honest, I had an absolute dirtbag of a boss who treated the women in the company in a certain kind of way. He was very, he made a lot of advances on women in the company. I worked in a really heavily male-dominated industry. And that wasn't an environment I wanted to work in. And so when I was selling chicken and Jay was getting not frustrated with me, but I was working a corporate job and then I was calling him, asking him to meet somebody in the driveway with those chickens. It was hard for him because he had his own things going on that weren't related to the farm. So at a certain point, he was not a fan of my boss at all. Very much not a fan. And I really didn't want to work for that boss anymore. And I didn't want to work for that company anymore. And so it just kind of became, I needed to make a decision on whether or not I was going to leave the company I was at and go to somewhere else in the same industry, or if I was going to leave that and go into farming. So I jumped into farming, which caused a lot of the diversification that you were talking about. Is I really didn't have another option because I needed to make money, and making money wasn't going to be enough with raising 4 pigs and 500 chickens. That was not going to pay my lifestyle that I had come accustomed to.
So chickens came first.
Chickens came first, yeah.
4 pigs came second?
I wanted bacon.
Okay, so 4 pigs come second,
yes.
Which still feels... Okay, 500 chickens, I don't know that feels manageable to me, but I can see in your scope with Jay's experience.
That's like a super manageable. Yes. I thought it was overwhelming at the beginning. I was like, holy crap, that's a lot of chickens, but it's really not now.
So 4 pigs, but then what was like the next big step from there?
Quitting my job.
Right, no, after that. Like once, so your baby business,
farmers markets.
Okay.
I started doing farmers markets. Probably when I brought on my first employee was when it was like really, really big then. I convinced my mom to leave her corporate job.
How quick after the driveway slinging of chickens?
Probably a year and a half, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Probably a year and a half after I quit my corporate job. It might have only been a year.
And then you convinced your mom. And I've heard you tell the story before that you convinced Jay that if you could save her salary in savings, and he would pay it. I'm not even saying that right.
Yeah. So my mom's company owned my company. So my mom was the director of operations and administration for her company. Her company owned my company, and I was the director of operations of my company. Corporate
company.
So her corporate company owned my corporate company. And so when I left, she also didn't want to work for that company anymore. So I was not unique in my feelings about that. And she was getting to the point where she wanted to retire, but she wasn't in a position that my mom's a worker.
Sharon picked the wrong job if she was trying to transition to retirement.
She did. Well, she wanted to retire. She was at that age where it was like, she didn't like the idea of leaving that job and starting something new. And she worked there for a really long time. And she just, at the level she was at, she was getting close to the retirement age. And she just didn't feel like that transition was going to be that great, because how many people are trying to hire somebody at that executive level at an almost retiring age? It's not really... And she didn't really want to be there anymore. So I convinced her to come work for me. I told Jay that because part of what we used to do in our corporate is contractual negotiations, and we used to kind of set up suppliers and things like that. So I told Jay that I could save him enough money to pay her salary the first year in his companies. And then we set up... There was this old house on the farm, and it was empty at the time. It didn't have a tenant in it. And we put big whiteboards on the walls, and we put a kitchen table in the middle of the room. And Mom and I got to work, and we wrote every one of his suppliers and started calling and negotiating and switching contracts and doing all of that until we could save her salary for the year. And then I basically got to have help for free for a year.
And then I knew that
he loved it, because I actually saved him more than a year's salary. And that savings continued on year after year, right? I saved it for him. So it was very good for him. He really enjoyed it. And my mom's really great at jumping in and helping with other things. She just wants to be around her family, and she wants to be jumping in. So it was just all around. It was so helpful. If the kids needed a ride picked up from school or whatever, my mom had no problem jumping in a vehicle and going and grabbing the kids. Or it was just really helpful to have her. And I get along with her really well. And I already had worked, her company owned my company. So I already went to her with a lot of things, and we always bounced ideas off of each other to begin with. So we already knew how to do that. It was just kind of flipping from me leaning on her more as being, I was in a really high level corporate career at 26. like 25, 26, 27. So I would look to her for advice when I was navigating that. And it was okay to get advice from her because her company owned mine. So there was nothing that was like not allowed to be talked about. So then it just turned into her kind of coming to me a bit more because of the change in dynamics, but we knew we could work together. So she's still with me now.
Okay. So Sharon comes to work for the farm. Jay pays for her.
Yeah, for the first year.
I just love that. Like,
and so I knew
different way.
I knew I had a year to figure out how I needed to pay for her.
So what'd you do?
So that was I diversified the heck out of the company. So we started doing farmers markets, and I really started pushing in on the marketing end of things. We started doing events to be able to market. I was working with our local tourism boards, and like, you name it, I was working with everybody and anybody. I was joining all of the different things and really pushing that company really aggressively hard to make sure that in a year, we gave up salaries and like benefits and all of those things. And I knew I needed to be able to make sure that we were going to be secure enough. Not that we would necessarily be able to match for me, not that I would have been able to match my salary, but that I needed to be okay.
Right. Pay the bills still.
Yeah.
And so when you say, because I feel like sometimes people just throw the term out, diversify, like we diversified, but What did that mean to you? Like lay it out.
Yeah. Okay. So we diversified species, first of all. So we diversified from just doing chicken to chicken, pork, beef, eggs. And I don't always recommend that. It's a lot to take onto my plate all at once. It wasn't quite all at once, but it was pretty quick succession. And the reason is, in my community, farms like mine compete with farm stores that are a bit more like, we have a lot of boutique butcher shops. We have a lot of high end, like whether they're farming the product or not farming the product, they are like beautiful farm feeling grocery stores. And so to not have a wide variety, I have a lot of competition between places that are more convenient than me. So we diversified. Like, I couldn't just do chicken. And the way that our system works here in Canada, we're under a quota system. So like, we can't just raise an unlimited amount of chicken or an unlimited amount of egg layers. So there's a little bit of regulation that came into play too, which is why we diversified out into pork and beef as well, where there's not a quota. There's no regulations to how much we can produce. So we started doing that. Then I diversified out. We started doing events, and part of the events was a marketing play. But we also did on-farm chef-led cooking classes where we brought in a chef and he would teach, butchery classes. And we did, bacon making workshops where you would come in and learn how to do all of like the breaking down of the pig and the curing and the smoking and all of that. So we did a bunch of those kinds of classes. We rented the farm out. We rented out the space that we did workshops to other people that were doing totally unrelated workshops. We'd have like a calligraphy girl that would come in and teach brides-to-be how to make calligraphy signs. And like, you name it, if I could hustle a dime out of that place in some sort of angle, I was taking it. And then we started working with a chef who we still work with today. And kind of our big diversification outside of events was we started doing a prepared foods line. And that really happened organically. Adrian started coming to the farm and he was buying product from us for his restaurant. And he was selling some frozen meals inside of his restaurant. He had kind of like a glass front freezer in the corner of the restaurant. And you could buy some frozen meals. And we started buying those meals back because we were so busy on the farm. And then we decided to start selling them with him.
I would just like to shout from the rooftops. One, so community chat was yesterday. And I said in there, who do we know around me that can do this? Because I was baking my last shepherd's pie from the last time I got to visit you. I made it last night for dinner. And no, actually the night before. Yeah, the night before this conversation. So whatever. My birthday, I just cooked your shepherd's pie because I didn't want to cook. And I was exhausted. And it was my last one in the freezer. And I could have cried because, one, they're so good. Truly so good. It's not like going and grabbing a Marie Callender's out of the cooler. And then two, is it's so convenient. and then you still feel like I felt like my mom had made the meal for me and put it in the cooler. Not like I was eating processed crap, not like I was. And then the double down of feeling good about like, oh, you're supporting local, you're supporting meat producers, you're supporting like everything that went along with that. Anyone in my area that thinks about doing this, I want to know, I want to be the first one at your door. I want to buy out your product because it's so needed for me. And I have a really hard time going to restaurants to eat. One, we're pretty far from restaurants that are open regularly. And so like to get home and then decide I don't want to cook and then get back in the car and drive all the way into town is not usually an option. If I could swing by somewhere and pick up meals like this.
But you are not alone. That is
I know. That's what I'm like, where are the farms that are doing, and I'm so mad that there's not an example of this in the area because I think it would catch on like hotcakes, right? And like everyone would.
For sure.
Because there's more behind it. Sorry.
And when we started doing it, it was like very uncommon from a farm.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was really not a thing. It was not as popular. It's becoming more popular. And I'm so happy it's becoming more popular because it's such an incredible way to increase the revenue out of products you're already producing. Instead of producing ground beef, we can produce ground beef, put it into a shepherd's pie, and suddenly we're making way more money on that same ground beef. And we're moving products that we oftentimes get stuck with. We use chicken backs to make broth and chicken noodle soup and things that I like normally would.
Telling me about the wings and the bone broth, like how many chicken wings you get stuck with when everyone wants breasts. And then thinking about, oh my gosh, if you cook them down into bone broth and that gelatinous bone broth it freezes, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't it freeze? Yeah. And so then you have a product that doesn't go bad, and it's like, dang, that's smart. That's like part of me wants to start raising chickens now.
It's all of it. It's like we use the fat in pork fat and sage biscuits. We use the bones. We use it's all the cuts that I would normally get stuck with or all of the things. And then we start producing so much revenue on top of the retail value of the meat. We create an additional margin on it from the diversification. And it did start with exactly that. I was buying the meals and our meat was in them because he was using our meat in the restaurant. And I was buying some of the meals back with him. And then it turned into like I was, we were taking them off of the bill of the meat that he was buying from us. And then Jay said to me one day, he's like, these things are so handy. He's like, I really think that more people need to know about these. And so I approached Adrian and I said, would you ever let me sell these? Like, I'll give you the meat and then you sell it back to me and then I'll sell it and we'll do it as a joint venture. I'll advertise that it's you guys. Is there an option for that? And we started out with just a couple products. We did chicken noodle soup, chicken pot pies, and bone broth, because that was all I had extra product for. That's now turned into a really big line. It includes things that don't even have our product in them anymore. Like we do like apple croissants and ginger cookies and stuff like that. So
those ginger cookies.
Ginger cookies are so good.
Okay. So really quickly, because I feel like if you're listening to this and you're thinking, this is such a good idea, how do I do it in the sense of like, what was the very first, very granular baby steps to, because not a lot of people, and I will say I can see it as one of the shortcomings here. Not a lot of people have necessarily a big bank of chefs if they're in a rural area. Like if someone came to you and said like, Kendall, I love this idea. I think we want to do it. Maybe they've got a whole freezer full of soup bones they can't get rid of from their last beef. How do I go about creating this? What would you do? What do you tell them?
So the awesome thing is the thing that sells best for us is comfort food. So there's two options. You can either, depending on what the regulations are where you are, as far as whether it needs to be in a commercial kitchen, whether you like whatever the laws are, here we have to be in a commercial kitchen because we're producing something that comes from raw meat and we're taking it to a cooked state. So it has to be in a commercial kitchen.
Yeah, I think most states are that way. I know there's some cottage food laws, but those are typically like with baked goods
things
and
stuff.
Yeah, not for meat product. So I would assume it's a commercial kitchen for almost everyone.
So if you are somebody who's a strong cook, and I have farmers that I've worked with on this in the past where I've consulted for them starting this where they were cooking it themselves. So if you make a killer chili, make some chili, but you might have to be renting space at your local church kitchen. You might need to be renting in a commissary kitchen. A lot of small towns, the small town that our hotel is based out of, they have a licensed kitchen at the ballpark. So it's like where the concession is, and you can rent it for super inexpensive. And they've got all the stuff to be able to do that. And you could go in yourself if you've got some, family recipes that you love that are, great comfort food, make them, put them in the packaging, freeze them. You've got a chef, you've got a prepared foods line. It doesn't have to be with a chef. I know lots of people who do it themselves. I like partnering with Adrian's been a longtime restaurant owner, but he was also a caterer. And I think it's actually the catering end of things that is better than the like restaurant
more valuable
end of
to
things.
You.
Yeah, it's that catering company. It's that ability to like if you do weddings, those chefs are pre-prepping that food in large quantities and then portioning it out. That's the kind of chef that I would want to partner with versus personally like a high-end,
right?
plated dinner kind of. No dig. I want to eat those people's food. I just don't think they're used to the same like production line into frozen soup, into soup containers to freeze as somebody who's used to doing large scale catering where it's a lot of cooking the exact same thing and portioning and things like that.
So and I know in our local area, there's some churches that have licensed kitchens, American Legions, Eagles Halls. I'm trying to think of who else. They usually don't advertise though that you can rent them. When I was doing the picnic business, that was something when we went into 60-person picnics, it was so many dishes that I needed a commercial dishwasher. And so my husband actually just walked into the Eagles Club and said, hey, what days are you closed? And would you be willing for, if my wife paid you, to let her come in and just wash her dishes? I didn't even cook in there. Like I just schlepped dirty dishes in, ran them through the commercial. Otherwise I was doing dishes for 14 days after a picnic. And so I would go in and do that. And they were really open to it because a lot of those clubs are struggling or they know that that's just a little bit more money that can go into whatever social projects they have or scholarship funds or however. So it's a good way to support your community as well if you can get in with something like that, as long as you can be a little flexible. Our Eagles Club like always is busy Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So or Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I knew I would have to be in on like a Monday, Tuesday to make it work. But that's a good place to start.
That's the beautiful thing though about prepared foods and why it worked out so well for us is that our chef is doing this outside of regular hours of catering. Like he could still cater events, but then he could do this on a Tuesday. I mean, Adrian now no longer runs his restaurant and he exclusively does our prepared foods line. Like that is all that he's doing now. But before he was running the restaurant and doing it. And then he left the restaurant because he was over the idea of the restaurant hours. And then he was catering and then he was kind of overdoing, the weddings and all that kind of stuff.
All the time.
He wanted his weekends back. Him and his wife were doing it together. And it was like they wanted their weekends back. And now he can cook Tuesday, Wednesday, and deliver to us on Thursday. And it's just... And he's done. And it's during the day. And it's whatever time and hours he wants. I mean, right now he's renting a commissary kitchen. So he rents outside of Vancouver where we're located. There's commissary kitchens where lots of different people all rent times and spaces and things like that. So he's currently there. But we are actually in the process. We just submitted our paperwork to the local health authority. And we are attempting to build a commercial kitchen on the farm.
I want to get back to that. I do want to offer one piece of advice as a rural economic development director that I can, which is if you don't know what a commissary kitchen is, or you don't know where a local commercial kitchen is that is available for rent by the hour, like you're talking about, reach out to your local business development center, your local economic development group. Those are two things you can Google, just your town name and economic development, or your town name and business development center, and call them and ask them, because they likely have the resources in the mall in Spokane. The Northtown Mall, of all places, somehow got into an agreement that they're one of the kitchens in the food court, because the food court's really shuttered and closed down. They started working with business incubators just to get income coming in for those kitchens. So there's some hidden pockets of opportunity, even if you think maybe your town doesn't have it. I would encourage you to reach out to those places as well if you don't know. Okay. And then I wanted to ask you something else because before we get into your big plans, although I'm dying to hear about them because I actually haven't heard anything. I saw one Instagram story and I was like, my radar is going.
I got your message and you're like, question mark.
And then you didn't say anything back. And I was just on to the next day. Fine. Not cool enough. I'm not.
We're going to talk about it in the podcast.
Okay. We always do that too. What money-wise? I know it's really taboo for a lot of people, but
it's not for me at all.
I know that's why I'm asking you though, because I think people would be fascinated. Can you break down for me in terms that that another meat producer would understand? What was the actual like dollars difference that you saw when you went just into that first initial? Because I know you're like way further down the line on diversified products for that.
Okay,
give me some
so
dollars.
let's take chicken broth. So we were cutting a lot of chicken, and then the backs I was selling for people who wanted to make their own broth, but I couldn't even come close to using them all because we couldn't sell enough
selling
of
them for
$2 package of 2.
Okay, so 2 backs for $2.
Yeah,
okay.
So like I was basically giving them away because I couldn't get rid of them, and otherwise I had to pay for disposal for them. Like if I can't sell them, they've got to go somewhere. So then I was like getting people to come pick them up for their dogs and stuff, and it was just such a hassle. So we went from taking that to turning it into broth that I was selling for $14.95. I ended up making a margin on it on top of the retail price, where I couldn't even sell them all for the retail price. It was something like 89% increase.
Okay, so what
with no additional work on my end at all? 0.
But you had to pay a portion of that to Adrian.
So
so break that down.
Yeah, so then I paid Adrian at the time. He charged me $4.95 per liter per like container of it to produce, and then I sold it for $14.95. So
you gave him the meat. So you gave him the meat.
Yeah.
He charged you $4.95 and you charged $14.95.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm going to say how we went about it with Adrian might not be the right way to go about it with everybody. So certain items, I gave him the meat. So I gave him the backs. When we started doing chicken pot pies, I would sell him the whole roaster chickens. And that's I don't do that anymore. Now we just give it. But at the time, we only had 3 products that we were doing. And he didn't want to have to be picking the meat off the wings. So he would cut the wings off and he would use that in his own restaurant. So there was like certain parts of the chicken that he wasn't using inside the chicken pot pie. So to make it easier, I would sell it to him and then I would buy back the chicken pot pie, and he was including the cost of the meat used in the pie in my cost. Whereas any of the products like bone broth, I gave him the backs and then he only charged me his cost of production that did not include, because he was not paying for the meat, it didn't include the cost of the meat.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Now that we have fast forwarded, we sell pre-done chicken wings as part of our line. So now I give him 100% of the meat. I don't charge him because it was too much like back and forth. And I have a very big trust level with Adrian. He has the keys to get into the freezer. We put an area that like he's an extension of our company. So I don't have any problems with trust or anything with Adrian. So I give him the meat. And then the price he's charging me is the cost of all the other ingredients. He does the packaging and his time.
Okay.
I don't pay for any of the other stuff. And then he charges me a certain amount. And then when I'm calculating my end cost to my consumer, he tells me we've got a big spreadsheet and we have all the different products and the sizes. And he tells me how much meat goes in each one. So like I know exactly how much meat he puts into a shepherd's pie. And then I calculate based on the retail value of the meat, because it doesn't make sense for me to be doing it with a wholesale cost, because I could sell that meat to somebody else. Like now we're big enough that I can sell, I can sell all my ground. I don't get stuck with ground. So retail value of the ground plus his cost to me to produce it, plus a margin. Typically, we don't take any additional margins less than, I think our lowest is an additional markup of 38%. Most are over 50.
Wow.
And I do no work. The meat gets picked up. The product gets delivered back to me. It is no difference on my end at all.
So you're recouping retail plus 50%
at least
margin.
38% with no additional work.
If we have not convinced you based just upon the fact that you would have less waste and more use of product and more whatever, please, like that number, and I'm not a meat producer. Like, I do not break things down by the pound. I don't, like, you couldn't ask me any of that, and I don't understand. But even from a business sense, on a farm, to hear a markup of 50%, farms don't operate like florists do, where it's a 300% stem markup. Like, that's just not industry standard.
And it's so good, because if we all of a sudden end up with too much, like, I'll call Adrian, I'm like, we have too many drumsticks right now. What can you give me? Well, like, what can we make? We've got way too much ground pork. What do you got for me? Our bacon ends, like, we cut all our bacon and then you get stuck with bacon ends. And it's like, what do you like? Yeah, you can do bacon bits and stuff, but that just goes to Adrian. If I have anything that's like a popped seal, now we handle it. We have our own butcher shop now, so that's not as big of an issue for us anymore. But sometimes you'll get a little mark on a chicken breast from processing, and you can just cut that out now. And I can't cut that out. There's it just doesn't look as good. Nothing's wrong with it. But then I can cut that off, and that goes into an Adrian pile. And Adrian, we package it and it goes to Adrian. So anything that comes to us, like, I can't sell a chicken breast that's got part of the chicken breast cut because of processing, but I can put it into the products that Adrian's making. So we don't have that family pile of meat that always happens when you're a meat producer. I get to eat the good stuff, you guys. I get to eat the good stuff because all of the other stuff goes into the Adrian products. And you can't tell, because it's still, as a meat producer, everybody knows it's a great product. It's just scratch and dent. And so all of that goes to Adrian. Yeah. And we have been able to develop beyond now products that just have our products in them. So now the sky's the limit. When you've got things like apple croissants and these additional, we do side dishes. So we do like mashed potatoes and we do all of these different things. They don't have my product in them, but they go with my product and they go really well with my product. And so now there's no limit. I'm not capped by how much meat I can produce. I'm capped by what Adrian can do, and we can always hire additional staff if needed.
It's pretty, I mean, easy probably isn't the right word. And some restaurateur out there will smack me, but I feel like it's not as difficult to find prep cooks. And like, that's not a highly skilled, does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's like a really the same task over and over.
Yeah, repetitive.
So, yes. So I don't know how hard it is for Adrian to find additional help, but I do know that there's not the same pressure of it being a kitchen that's like trying to get food out the window.
Oh yeah, like a plating
table.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's not that. Like, you're working in a kitchen that like the product's going to get frozen and then delivered to me. Nobody's waiting on that product. So if you're trying to train somebody, it's not as high stress and pressure. I mean, the product has to be good, but it's not quite the same as all the timing being perfect.
Yeah. I wonder how many small town restaurants that struggle, because I feel like that's just the reality of a small town restaurant is you have a really limited customer base. You have less traffic coming through. And I mean, how many times do we see them fold over and over and over again? And I can't help but in my little community-minded brain think to myself, maybe there is a farm out there right now that will call a restaurant that they know is struggling to keep their doors open and pitch this idea. And like, could it change the potential future of both of those businesses?
Yes.
So dramatically. And that makes my heart, I want, if that happens to anyone, could you please write us and tell us, because it would be so cool.
It honestly, it fundamentally changes our ability to generate revenue, decrease waste, all of the things that work out. And I can't even tell you, even all of those things aside, when I don't have groceries and I can quickly just go and run and grab a chicken pot pie and stick it in the oven, it makes my life easier, it's a product that sells really well because consumers need that. There's so many consumers who want to support local and they want to buy direct from the farm, and they just don't have the time, or, they're still relying on.
They don't want to break down a whole chicken.
Yeah.
They just that's not their jam.
They just don't. And we get a lot of customers that buy it for their aging parents. Their parents are still in their home, but they're not really as kitchen savvy as they were at one time. We sell individual size portions. So, a widower can grab them. We sell a lot to that. We sell a lot to, parents buying it for their kids who grew up and moved out, and if you're worried that they're eating craft dinner every night, they go stock it up. It's it's a gift for new moms. I give our prepared foods to anybody who has a baby, who has a family member who, you find out that an acquaintance or a friend's family member has cancer. That's your thing. That's what you're getting from me, is you're getting a collection of prepared foods because it takes care of people. So we find we sell a lot to that. Realtors buy them because they gift them to people for when they move. That's a good idea. Right? Because they move. Yeah. And so you can give them a frozen, delicious local.
You can't even find your toilet paper, and much less a pan to cook dinner in, and all of a sudden there's dinner.
Paper plates, paper forks, some napkins, and a big frozen chicken pot pie, and you've taken care of dinner on moving night. Yeah. And it's just, there's so many sales opportunities that are opened up when you have that. So we get the customers who want to make their own food from scratch, and we get those people, but we also get the people who don't want to cook any of the things from scratch, and that's just not in their wheelhouse. We pick up those people, and then there's a lot of overlap.
So did you ever take prepared foods to market, or did that come after markets?
We did.
Okay. What was the customer vibe at markets with that?
Okay. So customers loved it. I did have a few markets that I found out after the fact. It had actually gone to the board. So in my community, there's the markets that I attended, they're considered make, bake, grow, meaning you cannot sell something that you yourself didn't produce, no co-packing, no anything like that. And so there had been a couple of boards of big markets that I attended, ones that I produced a lot of revenue at that market. I brought in a lot of economic development at those markets, that I found out after the fact had actually had board meetings discussing the fact that I didn't make those chicken pot pies and I didn't make those shepherd's pies. I couldn't sell anything there that didn't have my meat in it. So I wasn't selling potatoes at that point or anything like that. My line of prepared foods during market was probably 5 items. This is really grown. I spent years with 2 items, 3 items. It was small, but it was still generating a good amount of money. And for the size of our farm at that time, that was fine. But I remember one of the board members said to me afterwards, and she was a farmer. And she said, I sat at a board meeting where they talked about you and the fact that they were going to tell you you couldn't bring them to market anymore. And she's like, I had to argue with them that you spent more time raising that chicken and you contributed more to it than Adrian did in making the pot pie. I'm like, I got 8 weeks on that chicken. I've got 24 months on that beef. Adrian's got an afternoon. Yeah, he's got an afternoon on it. Don't tell me I didn't make that shepherd's pie. My ingredient is the main ingredient, and it's the most time-consuming ingredient in the entire thing. So they ended up letting me continue, but that was something that came up for sure.
So in the last 5 minutes, you've given them how many different ways they can market it, talk to your realtors, talk to your moms, pitch it as the best thing for a meal train instead of just buying them gift cards. And then you've told them how to make sure they can argue their way into markets if it's a juried market where they've got those questions that they have to answer, things like that. So this is great. This is just so full of information.
And it's been now such an important part of our business that we are hopefully going to be getting past for our own commercial kitchen so that we can have Adrian on the farm working out of the farm store.
Are we circling back to this?
We are circling back.
Because I think it's so angry that you did not respond to my, actually I've had forgotten that you didn't respond to my question mark, but now I'm mad because you told me you didn't respond to my question mark.
Okay.
Fine.
In my defense, I really didn't think I was going to say anything publicly about it.
You posted a picture.
I know, because I just had to. Okay, so the reason that I didn't think that we were going to publicly talk about it is, so we've got the farm store and we have the butcher shop. The butcher shop is outgrowing themselves, so they're going to take over the store area because that's in the same building.
Yeah, square footage wise, they're expanding.
Square footage wise, they're expanding. Yep. They need to expand. There's no room for them to expand unless they kick us out of that building, the farm store. So we're getting kicked out of that building. We're doing a reno on an old horse barn that's on the farm that's like in the same driveway. So very convenient, very close to the butcher shop. Logistically, a great spot for it. In that decision, we started to kind of lay out the building. We have to have a walk-in freezer in there, and we started kind of laying it out. And then Jay and I actually went for date night, and we went to a restaurant that was very similar to the restaurant that Adrian used to own, a very like farm to table, but actually farm to table, high end, delicious food. And we had some wine, and then they have one of those like, so many of our ideas start this way. So then they have like a really nice kitchen. It's a really nice restaurant. And you can see in the kitchen, Jay was like, wouldn't it be cool if we had a kitchen in our store? And I was like, yeah, it would be really cool, but like, I don't know. And then he was like, yeah. And then Adrian can be like cooking in there. And I swear to you, the reason that Jay wants to put a kitchen in is Adrian will feed him. I swear to you. Yeah. I swear to you that's 100%, the reason. 100%. Adrian, he wants a pass-through in the store with a stool so he can sit at the like little bar area and Adrian can feed him. But then I started to think about it legitimately. And it was like, okay, Adrian's paying a lease of space. We've got a commissary kitchen and we've been doing this together for like 9 years. Even if when Adrian does decide to retire, this is going to be part of our business. So whether that means, and if we don't have Adrian, I'm going to need somebody in-house, not.
Right. That's a natural step for you.
Yeah. The company, like we're doing enough of it. It's big enough. It's important enough to justify bringing somebody in-house. And then I started thinking about just like logistically, I would say the hardest part for us with the prepared foods line now, the part that we kind of falter on is now we're so busy that sometimes it's hard for us to appropriately communicate with Adrian what we need and what we're running out of because we're just moving so much inventory so fast. So the nice thing will be Adrian is on site now so that he can manage, he can see what is selling. He can see what's in the freezer. He can talk directly to Jay to be like, I need X amount of pounds of this and X amount of pounds of that. We're not failing at that. It's just not as smooth as it was when we weren't as busy. And so it just feels like really the natural next step because otherwise it's like all of a sudden we realize we're sold out of things. We just sold our last chicken pot pie. And then it's like an emergency. You know, we're messaging Adrian. We're like, we need chicken pot pies. This way, that doesn't happen. And we're there. And it's like the good smells coming from the kitchen when people are coming by to shop. And we can sample and people can try things. And then the other part of it is fingers crossed we can get approved. We want to be able to have the option that if Adrian's there cooking something, people can order hot food. People can order, Adrian does incredible charcuterie boxes. Like people can special order charcuterie boxes. Previously, we used to do Christmas dinners, like take and bake all the side dishes for your Christmas dinner. And then you would just buy your ham or your prime rib from us. And then Adrian, so it would be like fresh salads and all the baked, like everything that you needed. And so we'd be able to have a lot more flexibility to do those kinds of things again, because it would be out of our own space.
So this is a business podcast. So tell me, how did that conversation go with Adrian? Because you've had a pretty set in stone relationship. I mean, obviously he's very flexible. I've never met the man, but he's a god with seasoning in a chicken. And he has a good working relationship with you that's fairly set in how it's been done. How has the owner, I mean, Jay has this random light bulb. You go, sure, we'll just add that to the bill. I don't know. Yeah. A commercial kitchen is not cheap in any way, shape, or form. Although I would assume you need slightly less equipment since you're not serving like a restaurant. You just need the bake. And anyways.
You'd be surprised how little equipment Adrian needs.
Right. I mean, I'm really thinking, but minus like the sink requirements and the sanitizing requirements that come with it, that it probably doesn't take a whole lot. Hint, hint. please consider that if you are thinking now that you maybe want to do this, that it's not like installing a restaurant kitchen.
Yes.
But how did that conversation go with Adrian? Like, well, how did you even broach it? Were you like, so I had an idea?
Okay, this is really bad. I wasn't ready to talk to Adrian about it. First of all, no.
Okay.
It's way worse than that.
No.
I was not ready to talk to Adrian about it. We are not hiring Adrian as an employee. Adrian is still going to be completely, like, it's going to be invoiced, all the things. He's just going to be working out of that kitchen. And the nice thing about him taking care of the kitchen is I don't need to organize the company that comes and gets rid of the grease tray, like the grease, all the stuff. I don't have to do any of that. Adrian handles everything. It's just in our space.
So you're essentially in contract with his business, and he is leasing your kitchen. But this is still, other than you now providing the infrastructure, you are still just as out of it.
Correct. Okay. We're providing the infrastructure. Right. So we are building as per his specs. Like Jay and I have never run a kitchen before. I'm like, tell me what you need. Tell me the layout. He's been there. We've mapped it out. He's told me the equipment he needs. So we're basically the infrastructure. Now, I was not ready to talk to Adrian about it. And then Jay came home when Adrian was there dropping off product. Jay saw him and Jay talked to him. I was like, I had not even wrapped my head around for sure that, like, I had not wrapped my head around it. And then Adrian got there and Jay was just like, we had wine and it was great. And this is the restaurant we were at. And we were thinking, what if it had a galley? What if it had a pass through? Mm-hmm. And what if we could do long table events again? And Adrian was always our chef for long table events. He was like, we could do open farm days and, customer appreciation days that have food. And he was just like, blah, 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 all the things.
And so Adrian just like...
Adrian's worked with us for a long time. He knows how we are. So then Jay said to me, he's like, Adrian's coming on Thursday. And can you be there so that we can go over some of this? Because I need to figure out the floor plan of the kitchen. So then Jay was still cutting when Adrian got there. So he was like in the middle of cutting. And I said to Adrian, I was like, do you want to walk over there while we wait for Jay? He's on his way. And Adrian's like, I'm so glad you're here. He's like, because I need both of you on this meeting so that I can figure out exactly what it is that you two want. Because like Jay basically wanted a restaurant.
Yeah,
he was like everything and serving food, and there was going to be tables, and people were eating, and it was open on weekend. Like Jay
went all in.
Wants a kitchen or wants a restaurant. I want a kitchen that sometimes serves food like a pop-up, but it's like one item. Like Adrian's he makes these amazing Italian meatballs, and they have like a candied garlic tomato sauce with fresh cheese grated on them. Awesome. You want to buy some of those hot? He's making them today. Grab some.
Yeah, not any extra work, basically just selling portions of what he's freezing.
Yes.
Going from there. So this, who this makes me think of, and I'm kind of bummed because you didn't go with us on that trip, is Lee Farms out of Tualatin, Oregon. Annie has the bakery mercantile. I'm not sure what all they call that building, but it's a farm store. It's got some greenhouse stuff in it, all their swag, and then it has a full kitchen in the back. And her husband, who had restaurant experience, can cater full dinners out of this kitchen when they want to on the farm. So they can either rent it out privately for events and he can cater with it or do different things. And so I think that that's another really good example of a functioning, profitable, and Annie and her sisters, if you don't follow Lee Farms, it's totally unplanned, but like they're amazing. The queens of just breaking it down and having those money conversations that people tend to avoid, and just really firmly putting their foot down of like, this has to be profitable to a margin that is significant enough for us to sustain the lifestyles that we are accustomed to. And that is non-negotiable. And so if you're looking for another reason why, there's another example. Are they 7 generations?
I think so. And
they're 7 generations. And the last working farm in that area county, because they're right outside of Portland. So if you need to see another way that that's working, or, you know, just like another, how could it fit into, and I think most of the time they're just doing baked goods in there.
Yes,
like that's the majority of their revenue is baked goods, donuts. Oh my gosh, their donuts are so good.
And we'll drop their Instagram in the show notes. So if you want to check them out, we will drop it in the show notes and you can check it out. I was so jealous that I couldn't make it to that trip. I just done Montana with you and I couldn't swing both back to back, but
I was so bummed too. But anyways, that was another good example of this. Okay. So you meet with Adrian.
Yeah.
Monetarily wise, in the scale of building out an entire new, much larger farm store, you have been shoestringing it on a budget, balling on a budget with your farm store. That's part of your selling point to your customers is like, we are not the bougie $1 million farm stores. Are you going to be? Okay, no. But hold on. Not going to be in looks and aesthetics, but are you actually going to cross $1 million for your renovation, do you think?
No, absolutely not.
You'll be under.
Absolutely not. Absolutely, like far, far under. We do the biggest expense will be the walk-in freezer and the walk-in cooler. I think when all was said and done with our pricing on that. Now, we needed to do that anyways. So that's how this all kind of started. We needed to build a new walk-in because we've outgrown our walk-in. That was already happening. I think we're at like 80,000 on
for the cooler
HVAC for the walk-in cooler and the walk-in freezer. So I think we're at an $80,000 addition for that building. Now, we are also putting a new walk-in cooler and a walk-in freezer at the butcher shop. So, I mean, we're over 100,000 on freezers and coolers.
Okay.
That is like the lion's share, absolutely massive. That's the big part of this.
So how much of a percentage increase will this commercial kitchen come out to, do you think? I mean, I know you're super early in this, so I'm not going to like pop quiz you to this number.
We are super early in this. I don't know what my equipment costs are just yet. We just submitted initial drawings of what the floor plan would look like based on Adrian's requests to even see if they will give us a go. And I don't want to price out all my equipment into like, we will do, if we get approved, we're doing it.
I'm just curious if you're talking like if someone listening to this is thinking about building a new farm store, out of the cost of what that farm store is, the potential price increase of a commercial kitchen may be 10%, right? Could be a percentage of, but then what amount of profit in your business is driven by the abilities to like, I'm trying to balance that out. Does that make sense?
For sure. So the agreement that we will have with Adrian is very generous for Adrian. It's very accommodating for Adrian. We love working with him. This is a space we would put in with or without Adrian wanting to cook out of it and wanting to develop. Our margins are so good on prepared foods that it makes sense for us to grow that into the business. And we can grow that into the business a lot easier with Adrian in-house. So it is really a cost that it will be carried by Jay and I for that. We would, again, like I said, we'd be putting it in anyways. The thing that's so expensive about commercial kitchens is like all the refrigeration and the freezers and stuff like that. And those are already in the store. So like fair. That's happening whether Adrian's, and like I'm already carrying inventory of Adrian's products in my freezers now. So, and I'm already holding the meat for Adrian's products in my freezers now. So it'll be, you know, like some vegetable space and stuff in my walk-in cooler, but that already exists because we have to have all our eggs and everything in there. So it's really not, those pieces of equipment are going to be put in regardless if we had a kitchen or not. So it's going to be, you know, like a 6-burner commercial stove and a 4-burner commercial stove. And we need to have 2 sinks. We need to have a commercial dishwasher. Those kinds of things are like pretty minimal in like, I don't want to
compared to $100,000 HVAC bill.
I don't want to sound like, oh, that's nothing, but we're talking like a couple stainless steel tables and, you know, and you can buy a lot of that equipment used, particularly in our area, because sadly there's a lot of restaurants that don't make it. And a lot of things, like a lot of people upgrade, all that. So there's like a lot of used commercial equipment that's in really great shape in our area. So it's not, it's really not the end all be all. Like that part of it isn't.
So are you going to become a vegetable farmer next?
No.
Maybe I did
plant my vegetable garden though.
Don't. I feel so. We bought probably 25 packets of seeds on a whim while we were shopping for Geodome, finishing stuff. And we just kept adding seeds to the cart. And I looked at CJ and I go, honestly, do you really think we're going to get all of these seeds started and in the ground for a garden?
Okay. Why are you buying seeds?
They're now judging me. Because
why are you buying seeds? Why aren't you just buying starts? Why are you doing that to yourself?
First of all, because homeschool. Second of all, the kids love it. Third, I think it was a coping mechanism in Home Depot as we were close to losing it, that like, oh, look at the pretty flowers. We should grow these and these and these and these.
You're telling me boys wouldn't like an instant garden where they stick an already pre-started start?
I think there's something to be said for like watching the seeds on the counter. Like they love that process. They've always sprouted like the mammoth sunflower seeds always come home from preschool. So I think that's a thing with them.
I just mean, like I did half of my garden in starts and half of it in seeds. And
I'm fully aware that this is way outside of my brain capacity at this point. Regardless, so I was just curious if you were gonna start growing like your own carrots, onions, and everything.
No, I did say to Jay, I was like, we could have a herb garden, because we were talking about the landscaping out front of the store, and I was like, oh, we could put an herb garden out there so that the herbs could go into Adrian's stuff. That would be the absolute extent.
How cool would that be, though?
I just thought it would be cute to have like a, really cool herb garden right out front, and then Adrian just goes out there and like
even if you have like the water troughs for like one of basil, one of whatever, and like every water oh gosh, dang, okay.
That was the extent, and that's probably not going to happen, but it did get talked about.
I'm so jealous. I'm not going to lie. Part of me, I love what we do and I love what we've started. I also get jealous of people that have product. I know. And I know there's downsides. Like I'm not trying to minimize that at all. I think, I don't know if it's part of me wanting to prove my worthiness to have the name ranch in it, but like I'm a ranch that doesn't own cows. Yeah. I don't know anything. I have 2 4-H lambs to my ranch, quote unquote. So
more animals than you had like a month ago.
I had 50 chickens. I think we're up to 50. No, I think I see that and I'm just like, man, there's nobody filling this need in my community. Yeah. So instantly I'm like, okay, I don't really want to sling meat at a market. I don't really want to like be a direct to consumer meat. Sales is not in my bandwidth right now, but I'm like, what if I grew like 1,000 chickens, butchered them only to do prepared food? And then I'm like, holy crap, stop. I know, but why am I this way? I don't know why I'm this way, but, in other news.
It's a lot. It's a lot of work. Like we are so busy right now with growth with the farm. Like I physically, now that we have our own butcher shop, now that we're doing all the things, like we saw a 65% increase in, like, it's the end of the month at the time of this recording. We did a 65% increase from this month last year to this year. And at the revenue numbers that we're at, that is a big jump. Like we're not talking $1,000 month where you're like, we did $1,000 last year and this year it's $1,650. It's like that. It's like a lot. It's a lot of pieces of meat and prepared foods items that have to go out the door to make that big of a jump for us. So we're really busy. I am looking forward to being able to expand on that part of the business though, because that part doesn't involve more work on our end.
It doesn't make it any harder for you.
No, it doesn't make it harder for us.
That's like the best part of, says the girl who's diversifying in the way that is right now, the most amount of work for me. The idea to be able to profit more off of something that does not makes you more money and it doesn't take any more of your time is just incredible.
Like we still have to pack like when orders have prepared foods, but of course, in the grand scheme, like when you compare that to farming and how much work we have to do to produce a cut of meat from like the birth to the end and then the cut and wrap that we all do, like that. We touch that so much and over a span of so long. So prepared foods to me feels like, to me, and I know somebody's going to be listening and be like, girl, you do more work than that. But it feels like I'm just marketing. Like we're marketing and We're sending it out into the world. That's it. And that is amazing.
Thank you for listening to this episode. We know there are only so many hours in the day, so we're honored you choose to spend some of your time with us. If you're one of the many rural women entrepreneurs who are struggling to find true community and step-by-step support that actually moves the needle in your business, join our signature group coaching program, the Workhorse Collective. You can find more information in the show notes of today's episode.
Together, we've set out to support and connect with women in rural business. If you found this episode valuable, we'd love it if you'd share with another woman in your circle. It would also be incredibly helpful if you would take a moment to leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes, and we'll catch you next time on the Workhorse Podcast.
Have you been spending a little too much on Uber Eats or pre-made food lately, just trying to keep your head above water? I guarantee you you're not alone, and likely have customers in the exact same boat. I know what an asset it is to have wholesome, nutritious food in my freezer instead of relying on yet another night of takeout. That's why my farm created a whole line of chef-crafted prepared foods. Not only does this leverage hard-to-sell cuts of meat from our butcher shop, but it also hits an entirely new target market. If you want to learn more, head to the show notes and check out my workshop on prepared foods and start earning more revenue with what your farm is already producing.